I didn't watch Happy Days. I was born in '87, so
Well,
I didn't
this
watch Happy Days.
interview is over now, Tom. Thank you.
How are you doing?
I could not be better. I'm gonna brag right off the top. I just came home from a book tour. Half of it was our brand new book, the second in the series, Detective Duck, and the case of the missing tadpole. And the other half of the tour was my memoir that is now a paperback. It is a bendable buddy, in case the original book is too heavy to carry around. You've now got this really wonderful paperback. Both those books, The Duck and the memoir in paperback, will be on the New York Times bestseller list
Hey, come on, get out of here. That's fantastic. Come on.
in 1 week. Now, this is a kid who could not read. So I am amazed, appreciative, and wowed.
Can you tell me that story, like a little bit about what you're talking about there, being a kid who could not read, and when you learned about that it was a learning disability? Can you tell me that story?
I grew up failing in school. As a matter of fact, they thought I was, they being my teachers, my parents, everybody else, that I would never graduate, that I would never make anything out of myself because my grades were so low. I took geometry for 4 years, same course. I took it in regular school, took it summer school, 4 years. Finally passed it with a D minus. And from that day in 1963 until now, Tom, you and me, Tom, no one has said the word hypotenuse to me. So what I realize is that we have to teach our children how they learn, not what we think they should learn. When my stepson, who is now 53, was in the third grade, we had him tested, and everything they said about him was true about me. I realized I was not stupid. I had something with a name. I had different wiring in my brain.
When you were a kid and failing these courses and struggling to read, and you didn't know what was causing it, what did you think was wrong with you?
I believed them when they said, yeah, I guess you're stupid.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea what could possibly be wrong, except that I couldn't imagine that I was stupid. And yet, I couldn't get anything right. So it was like I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was sad. I had no sense of self growing up.
When you saw that your stepson was exhibiting some of these same tendencies that you had as a kid before you got him tested,
Yeah.
what
I
was
said everything to him that was said to me.
what do you
My
mean?
parents came flying out of my mouth. You're not living up to your potential. You're lazy. Come on, go back in there and do it. Or you're not going to watch TV. And he couldn't do it. And then as soon as I found out, my entire paradigm of thinking about education and children shifted in like a second.
But in addition to the paradigm about education and children shifting, aren't you also, like, what emotions come up? Are you a little angry that you didn't get that same diagnosis when you were a kid? Are you a little sad that you didn't get that diagnosis when you were a
That's a
kid?
good question. Okay. First thing, I find out, oh, wait a minute. I'm not stupid. I might have an actual thing. I might be dyslexic. I am angry because I was yelled at. I was put down. I was grounded for most of my young life because I thought, oh, if he stays in the house, he's going to learn. Then I thought, okay, wait a minute. You've got this thing. So you got to learn to negotiate it. And then the third was maybe without that challenge, without having to fight through that, I would not be here talking to you today in 2024.
That the challenge of having to figure out how to survive, how to build a career, build a life while hiding the fact that you struggled with reading gave you some kind of motivation or lit some kind of spark.
Until I didn't have to hide anymore,
Yeah.
until I just started talking about it and said, hey, this is my truth. My brain is wired differently. I can't do math. I can't read very well. I can't spell, but I can do this. I can do that.
There must have been a sense of peace that came over you. Like, oh, I'm not broken. I'm not,
It was a release for sure. But I will tell you, the component of all of the self-doubt and lack of self-worth takes a toll.
Yeah.
I had to, until at this moment at 79, I had to rebuild myself in order to come out into the sun, because the damage done from the negative, from that's why when people say, hey, do you have any advice being a parent, do you have any advice teaching children who learn differently, I said, this is my advice: see who's in front of you. Every child is different. You can have 3 children, same family, same parents. They are all different planets. See them as individuals and then try and make their lives better individually for what they need, because they don't all need the same.
What strikes me is that you were successful before that diagnosis,
I was,
and
but
so
not long. Not long. I got the Fonz at 27,
yeah.
and I found out at 31.
But how did you handle script reading and memorization and auditions?
You know what? When you want something, you figure it out. When you really want to have this in front of you, and it's hard, then you learn how to work a little harder. You learn to put in more time.
So what did you do?
Went over those scripts, read them out loud, read them slowly so I didn't drop any words out of the sentence, underlined them, or highlighted them in yellow. And yes, okay, so I couldn't read, but I could memorize very quickly once I got it, so that I would memorize as much of a script as I could, go in and audition, and make it up, improvise. They would say, you're not reading the script as we wrote it. I say, I'm giving you the essence of the character.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. That's great. Well, I tell you what that reminds me of is that oftentimes when you talk to people who have struggled with undiagnosed learning disabilities, they talk about how they have to do way more. Like they have to work extra hard. They have to overcompensate.
But here it is. So what? If you want something, then you just put in the time, because there's more than one way to get to Rome. Writing books. Okay. Writing books came out of, I couldn't get hired because I was typecast.
Hold on. What do you mean?
Huh?
You were typecast as the Fonz?
Yeah. But I mean, like, severely. People said, oh, he is so talented, funny, good guy, but he was the Fonz. So I went to a friend and I said, I got a problem. I can't get hired. And he said, write books for children about your learning challenge. I said, well, I can't do that because I've got a learning challenge. He said, I'm going to introduce you to Lynn Oliver. She knows everything about children's literature. I met with Lynn. We hatched Hank Zipzer. Then we started writing. She can type and spell. I'm walking around her office. She's typing. She's got an idea. I wait. She types. She reads it back to me. We argue over every word. And 6 months later, we've got 39 novels.
The content of the novels itself is interesting, but what's as interesting to me is the font, strangely enough. And I think this is the first time I've ever asked a font question on the show.
Yeah.
But it's a font that's meant to be easy to read for
Yes.
folks who would struggle with dyslexia or learning disabilities, right?
The first time we used it was in a series called Here's Hank, which was Hank Zipzer, the world's greatest underachiever, in the second grade. And the font was developed by a graphic artist in Holland for his children who had learning challenges. And then it was like, it's so much easier to read and make friends with the page. And then the publisher of The Duck used a font that was learning friendly, because the Detective Duck is for emerging readers when they're just starting to read. And Lynn and I both feel humor is the gateway to getting some young person to read.
What was it like knowing that when you struggled to read as a kid? What was it like finding out that these tools even exist now?
I am amazed. I am grateful. I want every child to know that no matter how difficult it is for them to learn to read, that has nothing to do with how brilliant they are in their brain, how brilliant they are in their imagination.
Breaks my heart, Henry, to be honest, because I can hear you kind of talking to your younger self there, you know?
Yeah. But I get not only to talk to my younger self, I get to talk to young people, and I know exactly. A few years ago,
Yeah.
the head of Disney called me up and said, my daughter is dyslexic. She has to do a senior project. Now, I am a more mature person. She's 17. They come to my house, and she now records our conversation. 50 years between us. And I am telling you, her story and my story lined up like they were one. No air holes whatsoever.
She
How
also
she felt
yeah.
was how I felt when I was 17. We are the same.
Dumb, silly, underachiever.
Struggling,
Yeah.
the exhausted from having to do that extra work, but it's still worth it. But what was amazing is that we're all the same. I go into schools with Lynn. I talk to children sitting on their tushies on the floor, kindergarten to 8th grade, kindergarten to 12th grade. I do not change a hair on the head of the speech that I'm giving to all of these children in the same room. Every one of them gets it on their own level.
I should say that Hank Zipzer gets huge. I mean, so Hank Zipzer, the world's greatest underachiever, also struggles with dyslexia. The series becomes so popular, it was turned into a TV show on the BBC. Was there a moment you realized these stories were not just being written, but they were resonating with kids?
When we got letters, I got some of the greatest compliments of my entire lifetime. A child would write back, and the microcosm is, I laughed so hard my funny bone fell out of my body. Or, how did you know me so well? Now, these are children everywhere. They're in 7 languages. And all I'm doing is writing with Lynn what I know. Because every one of our series, and I think there are like 4 series, and I've written 2 adult books, but all the series are about a child on the outside looking in, wanting to be over there. And I didn't realize it until I look back. One of them is an alien. One of them is a kid moves into his house and finds a ghost in his closet. The ghost, of course, happens to sound like the Fonz, but I don't know how that happened. And 2 of them are about Hank, this little boy with dyslexia. And the other is this little duckling who lives with her pond friends on a beautiful pond, and she's an environmentalist.
She's an environmentalist who leads with curiosity. Her superpower is not flying or super sight; it's curiosity. Why did you want it? Why did you want to make her superpower curiosity?
This is interesting. The pandemic. Stacy, my wife, and I are doing, as everybody else, jigsaw puzzles. We are making, first of all, we're making like all these wrappers of every candy ever created, which was like insane. Where this red piece goes, if all the wrappers have red in it, I don't know. Okay. Then we did a beautiful pond in New Hampshire. Now Lynn calls up and says, from her house where she is sequestered, hey, remember the novel we said that Hank was going to read called Detective Duck? It was only a title in one of Hank's 28 novels. She said, wouldn't that be a great character, Detective Duck? I said, I know where she lives. I'm making the puzzle right now. Then we came up with friends. And then we made her, it was really important for Lynn, for her to be an environmentalist, that she took care of the beautiful pond they all live in. And then her egg rolls out of her nest down the stream and lands in this beaver's den, in this beaver's dam. The beaver said, oh, she's not like me, but I think I'm going to like raise her as a daughter. So she got the cleverness, the architect of the beaver. And she's smart anyway as a duckling. And oh, she's curious about things and wants to solve problems. And I'm telling you, that's how it all builds and becomes Detective Duck.
I mean, I don't got to tell you, I'm no doctor. You can tell by the mustache. I'm no Dr. Phil. You know, I'm not. I'm no.
And I just say this.
Yeah.
And I mean this in the kindest way.
Yeah.
You are so lucky not to be that bag of baloney. And I mean it in the kindest way.
Noted. I'm no Dr. Phil, but it sounds, or I'm no, I don't know, who's a Fraser Crane? I'm trying to think. I'm no Sigmund Freud. That story.
Let's stick with Sigmund.
That story also about an outsider.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I grew up as an outsider. I always felt that I was not as cool as all those Bill Murphy and Harvey Joel Meyer in my high school class. And I wanted to be in their clique. And I was never quite inside.
So here's my question about that.
Yeah.
You go from, so you're this outsider, you're not as cool as the other kids in class, you can't get there. And then you play, and I'm not being silly here, you play this incredibly popular, confident, ultra cool guy, the Fonz. Like, how did it feel when you got to disappear into that character?
Do you know what? It is like the universe smiled at me because I got to play who I wanted to be, but wasn't. And then I gave him loyalty. And then I gave him taking care of his friends and Mrs. C and Shortcake and Mr. C. And that, so under that exterior, I cannot tell you, I go to Comic Cons all over the world. I meet these guys with tattoos and leather and I'm riding a bike because of you. And they are people who on the street, I would cross the street if I saw them coming. But when you meet them, I see their most tender side. And it just all came together. It was like a gift from the gods.
When did the typecasting stop?
Remember, Happy Days ended in 1983. And I wrote the books in 2003, still suffering from that, having a great life, being a producer. I had to figure out how to reinvent myself in order not to fade into the dust. And there is the lesson. We all can do a lot more than we think we can. I was negative. I said, my lawyer said, hey, I'm going to start a production company for you. I said, can't do it. Don't know anything about it. And I did not think I could until I did it and realized this is not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. And there is somebody else who can do the stuff I can't do.
But the time does come where, like, I didn't watch Happy Days. I was born in '87, so I didn't watch Happy Days.
This interview is over now, Tom. Thank you.
Between Dr. Phil and not watching Happy Days, I'm out of here.
I'm telling you.
I first found out about Happy Days through the Weezer Buddy Holly video, by the way.
How about that? That moment. So I'm now in the Weezer video, and my youngest son listens to Weezer, thinks it's the coolest thing since cream cheese. Mm-hmm. Now they are performing at Rockin' Around the Clock Christmas or whatever it is, one of the radio stations here in LA at the Universal Amphitheater. I am feeling unbelievably low at this moment in my career because I'm not moving forward in any way. And they asked me to announce them, to introduce them. Okay. Thousands of people in this amphitheater. I'm feeling really low. I walk out, my head is down, looking for the spot I'm supposed to stand in. My head comes up, and the place breaks out into cheers that took the roof off. And I thought to myself, this is how pathetic it was. I thought to myself, I still exist. Oh. I'm still alive. Oh my God. That moment in my life was so poignant and filled and important to me.
It was a real moment. It came free with the Windows CD. I remember that. That's how I watched it. It came free when you got a copy of Windows. It showed up on that. Yeah. Well, this is all starting to make sense because I wanted to ask a question about a quote I saw from you because I wanted to talk to you briefly just about Barry. And one of our favorite roles you've done around here is Gene Cousineau on Barry. So when we first meet him, he's this pompous dude obsessed with the glory days, regaling his acting students about the old times. The character gets deeper and more complex as the time goes on. You win an Emmy for playing that role. But you said that working with a therapist is what helped you nail that role. But I couldn't find any specifics as to what they helped with.
Okay, I'll tell you. So about 10 years ago, I am really just like slopping away. I feel completely confused. Maybe it is the age, maybe it is the career, maybe it is hoping something will happen, the pressure of family. And I went to see a therapist. And this woman, this is before Barry, I now say to her, I'm a block of Swiss cheese. I got holes in my being, the size of which, it's like treacherous. I would like to become a block of cheddar. No holes. And I started working with her and being able to listen to the truth. You are not this. You think you are. This is you're covering all of that stuff. And I am, okay. The image for me is that the bottom of my brain is like an oil can and it's soldered shut. So nothing from the feeling, from the emotion is going into my body. Just brain, just head. And she's helping me puncture that lid. My image, I've said this before, but my image is pouring. I have heavy cream in the morning with my coffee.
Nice.
And when you pour it into a glass of coffee, you see it swirl and it goes from black to beige to brown, and it makes all these beautiful colors. No color in my body coming from my head. Now, all of a sudden, the thoughts are starting to drip. The emotion is starting to swirl in my body, which gave me the ability to give the depth to Kusino.
It gave you, because you were able to experience more emotions in your real life, you were then able to bring a greater depth of emotion to the character.
Without a doubt.
Interesting.
Without a doubt. I've said this before. If I were to give that woman a gift, my therapist, it would have to be the size of a skyscraper. That is how indebted I am to becoming a garden again, of just blooming again.
I love that you're still working on yourself. I think as some people, yeah.
It is essential. It is scary.
Yeah.
It is, you gotta really buckle in, because there are truths that are, sometimes I wince. Like a thought will come into my brain of what I was. And I think, whoa, that is horrible.
No, he was good too. What's your relationship like with reading now?
I am still not a good reader, but I am more relaxed about the fact that I can't read, which allows me to have it easier to read. I love Daniel Silva. For some reason, the man writes where my brain it's like it's going down a river of words. Lee Child, I can read scripts now and thrillers, but not much else.
The last question I wanted to ask you is, in addition to all this incredible work you're doing, you are also the recipient of the key to Winnipeg, Manitoba.
And I'm coming back to Winnipeg tomorrow. I'm on a plane tomorrow morning.
Really?
to make a movie with Bob Odenkirk in Winnipeg. Boom. The
Does I
peg.
mean does having the key to the city mean you can just walk in anywhere? Can you go to any like?
You
Can you
know
go
what?
to?
I'm not going to take it with me because it's just too heavy to put in my suitcase. But hopefully they'll remember.
You know, you should be able to walk into any shop, open it up. If it's locked, you should be let in.
I agree with you 100%. We'll see if that happens.
And go to. Do you know about Ray and Jerry's?
No, what is that?
Ray and Jerry's is this old restaurant in Winnipeg. It's like an old steakhouse from the 60s that has been untouched, both in decor and in menu. It's maybe my favorite restaurant in Canada.
Okay, I am going. I am going. As a matter of fact, I have Friday night dinner, Sunday dinner, Wednesday dinner. I'm going.
You better do it. This is a great opportunity to get a chance to talk to you, man. It's a great pleasure of mine, and I loved reading the book, of course, but I loved reading about the story of why this book got written in the first place almost as much. Thanks so much for making the time.
You know what? I thoroughly enjoyed. You pushed me in this interview. Usually it is more glossy. This was great. This was great, Tom.